The Honourable Member Gareth Hughes.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Kia ora. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Kia ora. I rise to take the call on part one of this bill, and I look forward to taking a few calls. I acknowledge the contribution we've just had from the Minister there, and I agree with what he says in general about road safety. We have a problem in New Zealand. We need to do something about it. It's been a long-standing problem. We've improved somewhat over the last several decades, but still we need to be doing more. I agree with large chunks of this bill when it comes to changes to parking wardens, when it comes to alcohol interlocks, when it comes to the procedural rules for the NZTA. That stuff's all great. Clearly the big issue this bill addresses is alcohol. And this bill, when looking at alcohol, can't be taken in isolation. Clearly we have a national cultural drinking problem. It's not just a alcohol on the roads problem. It's a wider cultural problem that New Zealand has. And unfortunately, in this bill, we're not taking the single most effective thing we could be doing to dealing with alcohol on the roads. Likewise with the alcohol reform bill, we're simply looking at targeting young drinkers with the changes to the drinking age, but we're not looking at the broader cultural problems. We're not looking at addressing the alcohol advertising or the massive amounts we have of alcohol advertising. We're not talking about changes to hours. We're not talking about RTDs. We're simply looking at the youth stereotyping, and this is again what we're seeing. Excuse me, Mr Speaker, Mr Chair, I've got a cold. Likewise with this bill, the focus is on young drivers. Now, I acknowledge the work that Ms Fenton's doing in her SOP, but the Green Party will not be voting for that SOP. As the former youngest Member of Parliament, I acknowledge Jamie Lee, who is just here. I wanted to oppose this. I want to keep... getting my licence at 15 was an important part of my journey to life, and I know it is for lots of young people. And because of the terrible state of our public transport in many of our provincial and rural towns, young people don't have options. We may be surprised in this House, but many 15-year-olds are literally providing income for their whānau. They're out working hard, and they need to get to work somehow. So this was a challenge for me and for my caucus to discuss, but we did look at the evidence, and I think it's pretty compelling. In Australia, 60% less accident rate for the same age bracket. We support the raising of the driving age to 16. We support further initiatives when it comes to driver training. And I note in Germany it costs around 2,000 to 4,000 euro, I understand, to get your driver's licence. While I don't advocate for that in this chamber, I think we should have strengthened driver training. But clearly the main thing we need to do for these young people that aren't going to be able to drive between 15 and 16 is give them better public transport. And unfortunately that isn't happening under this government. We support the lowering of the drinking age for the under 20-year-olds, but we think this should only be in conjunction with the general lowering of the blood alcohol level for adults. There's two issues here. There's the transition. On their 19th, almost 20th birthday, someone can only drink up to 0.03, yet a day later on their birthday they can go all the way up to 0.8, totally out of the bounds of the OECD average, We're an international outlier when it comes to this. There's going to be transition problems, and I want to acknowledge that. Also an issue of consistency. What's good for young people the limit for young people should be the limit for adults. We're sending the wrong message. We're sending young drivers the message we don't trust them with alcohol, when in fact the problem is a broader cultural problem. Same with the alcohol reform bill. 92% of our problem drinkers in New Zealand are over the age of 30. We can't just stereotype young drivers, but we do acknowledge there is work to be done here. Enough's going to be said about 0.05 today, but I do want to challenge a couple of the comments from the Minister. He says there's not enough evidence. I understand there's 300 international reports that show this. The experts and the people who produce safer journeys were pretty compelling in their argument that we could save between 15 and 33 lives. I don't believe the NZTA plucked those numbers out of thin air. There is an evidential basis for lowering that. We're simply moving into line. It's not going out on a limb. It's simply moving into the OECD average. It's simply listening to the World Health Organization, who are the experts. It's clearly popular. We've had a public consciousness shift over the last couple of decades when it comes to that drinking level, and we're missing the opportunity. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We've got the public behind us, we do have the evidence behind us, we've got the desire, yet I don't know why the Minister didn't advocate in his Cabinet for doing this. I thought the Minister was going to advocate for lowering the blood alcohol limit after the work he did in the media around his wine consumption and driving. What happened in Cabinet? I'd love for the Minister to take a call and Mr. Chair.
I call the Honourable Member Heather Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It gives me pleasure to stand and speak to this part one of the bill. In large part, the ACT Party is supporting this bill. It agrees with most of the initiatives in the bill. Most of them make a good deal of sense, particularly the provisions around education for young drivers. And I take on board the points that the Minister made when he took a call just before the Green member to talk about the initiatives that he's got in place there. The Green member made a very pertinent point when he said that problem identification is very important, and that's absolutely correct, because unless you are able to identify the problem accurately, there's no way that you can get the solution right, except the odd time by good luck.
Sorry to interrupt, Member Ken. The use of the word you keep on bringing the chair in twice now.
My apologies, Mr. Chair. One cannot get the solutions right if one has not identified the problem correctly. The Minister, when he was speaking about two particular initiatives are relevant to this part one for the ACT Party, because we will be having a split vote on this part. The two initiatives in particular that concern two of our members, that's myself and Sir Roger Douglas. Firstly, the issue in Clause 12, that of the age, the lower limit driving age, raising the age from 15 to 16, and the second is Clause 23, where the alcohol limit for the under 20s will be raised to virtually nothing apart from a general fudge factor. Two issues that are important. And the reasoning that the Minister gave for putting in place the package around young drivers, which in principle we support, but those two particular details we don't, because I'm not sure that the problem definition has been well identified and has been looked at as a whole. Why are we different from Australia in our road deaths rate? And my understanding is it's not just the youth, the young people, the younger drivers who are affected, but in fact everybody across the board. And there's three things that it seems to me are very important when we when we look at why we do have difficulty on our roads. And I call them the three E's. The first is education. The second is enforcement of the laws that we already have in place. And the third is engineering, so really the state of our roads. And I think many other countries have got those three E's, for want of better terminology, better sorted than we have in New Zealand. Now, of late, in the past decade particularly, the engineering of our roads has improved significantly, and I know the Minister has worked long and hard in this regard to improve the state of our roads. For many years we had roads that really were substandard. The Canberra was wrong, we had tight corners, we had large difficulty largely because of our engineering, and that has been improving, but I think we still have some way to go yet, and I do applaud the Minister on his initiatives there. In the ACT Party's view, he's doing absolutely the right thing in focusing on that part of the infrastructure for the nation. Education has also improved, and I look to when I got my driver's licence, as many other members will remember, it was about hopping in the car and having a spin around the corner or around the block with the local policeman. That's certainly how I got my licence, and that gave one an enormous amount of confidence, but didn't necessarily make one a very good driver, Mr. Speaker. Education is hugely important, and although the ACT Party is really in favour of compulsion, I am in fact in favour, because I've seen it with my own children, putting in place defensive driving courses, because I think they significantly improve the skill of the driver, they improve their awareness, and they improve the outcomes. And so that sort of initiative I am all in favour of. That educational component is hugely important. The third thing is enforcement, and we already have pretty sound laws, I think, in place. Where they are let down is in the lack of enforcement. And if there's one thing that we could do, it is focusing hugely on enforcing the current laws we have before we change what's in place before we change what's in place, Mr Chair, and putting new things in. And it seems to me we would be better concentrating our efforts on improving the enforcement of many of the things that we already have, whether that be blood alcohol levels or whether it be some of the initiatives for young drivers. But those sorts of things do need to be focused on. So engineering, education and enforcement. Mr Speaker? Mr Chair?
I call the Honourable Member Chris Farfoy.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair, for the